one of the most famous and talented country music duos in the world, and just an hour before the deadly Vegas shooting massacre, John Rich and Big Kenny of Big and Rich were on stage. I interviewed John Rich yesterday via Skype from Nashville, where he talked about his religious upbringing as the son of a preacher and why faith is key during these dark times. First of all, I want to commend the both of you so much, because to have to be part of such a tragic experience and to have such grace and honor and still be beacons of light is something really, really noble. What is it that keeps you, grounded in that center for yourself?
Well, for Big Kenny and myself, we thought it was important to be able to go on and kind of put a familiar face out there for all the fans and people to see us talking about what was going on there just prior to this shooting taking place. I'm sure at this point you've probably seen the video of 22,000 people singing in unison, "God Bless America," with their iPhones in the air and the lights were turned on. It was this incredible, powerful moment of unity. And these days and times, it seems like there's not a lot of unity, but there definitely was unity in that moment.
Wow.
Only to see what happened about an hour and a half later. And so Kenny and I wanted to make sure we really put a spotlight on that to remind people, who this crowd really was, who they stand for, and what was really important to them, which was singing a song like "God Bless America."
Sing it now, say it.
To your point about, believing in God, yeah, of course. I mean, a lot of people don't believe in God. We do. We feel like He's the reason that, He's the reason for every breath we have, every heartbeat that we have. And it was important to us to speak about Him and about our country and really the things that bind us all together instead of the things that tear us apart.
I know that you've studied a lot of the scriptures, the Old and New Testament, and I myself am on a similar journey, and I've personally seen some pretty amazing things. I mean, this is a place where it's the cradle of everyone, and it's like it makes you scratch your head and wonder how something that was so united thousands of years ago has created such hate and separation in our modern day world. Could you explain, just based on some of your own studies and experiences?
That's a really big question. I'm not sure anybody has the answer to that. Other than, if you look back through history, through all the thousands of years that, Scripture has talked about, all the empires that have come to be and then have passed away, and then new empires, and you've always seen the struggle that has ensued around believers and non-believers. And, I think that's still out there. There's no doubt that this guy who perpetrated this horrific act, he's not one of God's kids.
That's right.
This is a guy that turned his back on God, turned his back on humanity, turned his back on his own. The DNA of a human is innately against doing something like this. I mean, that's not what we're built to do. You would have to have totally turned your back on everything good that was ever created in yourself to do something like this. It's in essence pure evil. And I think that's why a lot of us have trouble comprehending what this guy did or why he did that, because you can't comprehend pure evil.
And I mean, I also am very much a strong believer in a higher power, and we're all given a gift of some sort, and you've been given a gift to inspire. I watched you on Celebrity Apprentice, the season you were on when I was living in New York. I mean, you are like a force to reckon with. Like, was this something you think that was, embedded in your DNA, or the result of having a father who was a preacher who instilled these very strong faith-based values in you?
Well, I think every human out there has the ability to have impact. Not everybody has impact like I do, and I don't have impact like they do. Some people impact behind the scenes. Some people are more in front. But I think every person out there on the planet has the ability to impact, and they should take that responsibility on and take it very seriously. In Las Vegas, there's all kinds of people you will never hear their names. You'll never know who they were. but they had maximum impact because they jumped into action behind the scenes and saved people's lives. You know, you think about those guys that went after the shooter. I know for a fact that a lot of people in our audience that night were off-duty police, firefighters, there were nurses, there were doctors, all kinds of emergency workers that were just there having a good time. And the last thing on their mind was they would have to jump into action. But when it got tough and everything started happening, what did they do? They jumped into action. So that's their impact. I think to your point about me, you know, I have the great responsibility that, you know, I can talk to a lot of people and get a message out there. And, you know, that's why I'm talking to you today. It's why we've been talking to folks for the whole past week to try to, you know, just remind folks of the unity that existed right before that. That unity's still there. A gunman does not tear unity like that apart. If anything, I think it binds us together even more strongly.
We have the benefit here on this channel. We interview Christians, we interview Muslims, we interview Jews, like everyone together. Like, what can we do as a creative community to kind of take this darkness and continue to, you know, elevate it higher and to keep that, you know, the fever pitch of people stepping in and caring about one another as human beings at a time of so much darkness in America right now?
Anytime somebody does something like this, the overreaching goal of that person is to strike enough fear in the hearts of people that it will change the way that they live, it'll change the way that they operate. And if they can make people, you know, cower in the fear that they've caused, then they win.
My neighbor lost his house 'cause he can't find a job. Don't you dare pledge allegiance. Don't you dare speak of God. Speak of God.
The song says, that's why I pray, because all these things that are going on, that's really, at the end of the day, all you're left with is that. You know, go, well, take care of them. You know, we're praying for them. And that's a real thing to us. You know, it's not just a phrase that you toss around.
When you connect with your belief system, I think it empowers you to a point that you know you're capable of doing anything that you dream of and you really want to get there.
You believe, you know, also in the, you know, the sense of like where there's really great darkness, there's an opportunity for great light, you know, to see people really step forward, tell their truth. Like, do you believe we can enter, you know, a better future in light of such a horrible course of events?
Well, I mean, there's a scientific theory, you know, that for every action there is an equal and opposite reaction. So for something as nasty as and evil as what happened in Las Vegas, you know, the laws would tell you there's an equal and opposite reaction to that, which would be on the side of good and on the side of God and light at that point. And so I think that's what you're starting to see happen now. And I think around the world, you know, there's terrible things happening all over the place all the time. I think it really is a responsibility for all of us out there to report this kind of stuff when we see it and power through it. And like I said, bind together. You know, we're stronger together than we are apart, for sure.
That's right. Thank you so much for, you know, taking the time to make this happen. Really such a pleasure to interview you and keep spreading the positive message because, you know, I live in Israel. There's something very, very powerful in the world, and I think there is, you know, there's something to it, and we need to make more people believe that, you know, that there is a reason to believe. So thank you very much.
Without a doubt.
If I could forget them on my own, I'd let go and just move on. But heaven knows I am only human.
All right, coming up next.